Today on Rappler, a manhunt for suspect number 2 in the Boston bombings continues after one suspect is killed in a shootout with police.
The United States did not have intelligence before the attack, so it was a total surprise. And I can share with you that any successful terrorist attack is an intelligence failure.
Terrorism expert Rohan Gunaratne calls the Boston bombings an intelligence failure. And President Aquino supports Commission on Elections Chair Sixto Brillantes on airtime limits for political ads. Hello, I'm Maria Ressa. Welcome to Rappler, your social news network. Police search for the second suspect of the Boston Marathon bombings after one suspect is killed after a gunfight with police. Early Friday, the Boston Police Department says in a tweet, one suspect deceased, second suspect with a white hat at large and considered armed and dangerous. The two suspects are brothers. Public transport is suspended and police seal off portions of the Boston metro area as they track down suspect number 2. The Associated Press identifies him as 19-year-old Zokhar Sarniev, who had been living in Cambridge, Massachusetts. CNN reports the two suspects are brothers. Boston Police Commissioner Ed Davis says one police officer was killed and another wounded in the operation. Davis says the two suspects first tried to rob a convenience store in Cambridge across the river from Boston. They then went to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, where one campus police officer was shot several times. He died in the hospital. MIT student newspaper earlier reported gunshots were fired near Building 32. Hours before the manhunt, the FBI released photos and video of the two suspects of the Boston bombings that killed 3 people and injured more than 170 people on April 15th. The FBI gave no details of their identities, dubbing the suspects Suspect 1 and Suspect 2. An international terrorism expert calls the Boston bombings, quote, a very significant terrorist attack after the September 2011 World Trade attacks. Rohan Gunaratne, the head of the International Center for Political Violence and Terrorism Research, says the Boston attacks are an intelligence failure.
The United States did not have intelligence before the attack, so it was a total surprise. And I can share with you that any successful terrorist attack is an intelligence failure.
Why did it fail?
It is because the United States has been largely oriented towards detecting the threat to the US from overseas, not the threat to the United States from within.
Soon after the Boston bombings, letters addressed to a U.S. Senator and President Barack Obama are intercepted. The letters contained ricin, a lethal toxin. On April 17th, a fertilizer plant explodes in a massive fireball in West Texas. Gunaratne says at least 2 incidents might be related. All that is followed by the shooting at MIT.
Possible. At least 2 of these incidents are related. It is also very likely that the ricin attack is by a terrorist group, because terrorist groups have used ricin before very successfully. We believe that this is the single biggest crisis phase for the United States after 9/11 in terms of detecting, disrupting, containing threats.
Gunaratne says the recent incidents in America could pose terrorism threats to other countries. But he says the Philippines is, quote, very secure because the government's peace efforts can help deter foreign terrorists from coming into the region.
I believe that the government's ability to enter into peace negotiations with Haji Murad is the single biggest breakthrough, because peace talks, structured peace negotiations with the MILF has yielded tremendous success, and this needs to be sustained so that the south of the Philippines will be a hostile area for these foreign elements.
Gunaratne says criminals and terrorists now operate largely in cyberspace, making it important for police to police the internet.
Very important medium for recruitment, for radicalizing, politicizing, mobilizing their supporters. Internet needs to be policed. More than 10,000 terrorist and extremist websites and blog sites are hosted in the US. It's because of the laws. Laws are very weak. But I believe that there must be a greater discussion and there must be a global cyber regime where we do not allow criminals or terrorists to misuse the internet. There's more.
Gunaratne says it's important for governments to work together.
Needs to look at the geopolitical and the geostrategic interests, but also they need to work together with other countries, even if they may be competitors, to reduce a common threat. Terrorism is a common threat. And if you don't...
An estimated 35 people are killed in the explosion of a fertilizer plant in Texas Wednesday night. That's Thursday in Manila. According to USA Today, West Mayor Tommy Musca says the figure includes volunteer firefighters and first responders. Earlier, Waco police estimated 5 to 15 people were killed. Local Emergency Services Director George Smith also said earlier the death toll could reach 60 to 70. Musca tells CNN emergency officials are still looking for survivors. President Benigno Aquino asks Commission on Elections Chair Sixto Brillantes to reconsider his statement that he may resign over several Supreme Court decisions against the poll body. In an interview in Cebu, Aquino says it will be difficult to appoint a new COMELEC chief with less than a month before the May 13th polls. He says, "I think he will see that the country needs him to chair the COMELEC at this crucial period." He adds, "When he feels that he's ready to meet with me, I'm always ready to meet with him." On Tuesday, Brillantes says he was disappointed with the temporary restraining order stopping COMELEC from implementing its rules on political ads, limiting national candidates to only 120 minutes for all TV stations and 180 minutes for all radio stations. Aquino says he backs Brillantes' stand on the issue, saying spending for many ads tempts politicians to tap questionable sources of funds. On Thursday, Brillantes warned senatorial candidates to advertise at their own risk, with the Supreme Court yet to issue a final decision on airtime limits. Justice Secretary Laila de Lima says a human rights superbody will prioritize the abduction case of activist Jonas Burgos. On April 26, 2007, unidentified men picked up Burgos at a restaurant inside a Quezon City mall. The Interagency Committee was created to address cases of enforced disappearances and extrajudicial killings. This comes after Malacanang ordered a, quote, more focused probe on Burgos' disappearance. The Court of Appeals holds Lieutenant Harry Balyaga responsible for his disappearance. Balyaga belonged to the Army's 56th Infantry Battalion based in Bulacan when Burgos was seized. The Supreme Court also orders the AFP to produce reports related to the Burgos case following new evidence that could allegedly link the military to his kidnapping. The Philippine Coast Guard says the Chinese fishing vessel that ran aground on Tubataha Reef over a week ago has been removed. The Coast Guard says the 48-meter ship was hauled by a tugboat from Tubataha. It will be taken to Puerto Princesa in Palawan. The ship's 12 Chinese crewmen are arrested and charged for poaching in the Marine Reserve. Anger mounted after hundreds of dead pangolins, or scaly anteaters, that's a protected species, were later discovered in their ship. Authorities also filed corruption charges against these Chinese men for allegedly trying to bribe park rangers. Excitement builds up as Palarong Pambansa 2013 is set to kick off in 2 days. The games are filled with many inspiring stories like this one from a young swimmer in Zamboanga del Sur. Natasha Gutierrez reports.
Jomar Maalam is a 16-year-old swimmer from Zamboanga del Sur. He learned to swim living by the sea all his life, surrounded by fishermen. Like his teammates, he is excited but nervous for Palarong Pambansa, the country's largest sporting event. But Jomar is also different from the rest of the swimmers of Region 9. He has no legs.
Kahit pagod na siya, yun, kinakayanan niya. Kasi gusto nga talaga niyang manalo, ganun. Yun, interesado talaga siya.
It is the first time in history Region 9 is sending an amputee swimmer to Palaro. Jomar has been training for a year and competes with other regular swimmers in his home region. This is the first time he will swim against other disabled athletes. Jomar is unfazed by people who make fun of his disability.
Okay lang ako sa tintawanan ko. Malabot. Kasi, nanita, mauni hatay ito sa Diyos.
2 days before the games begin, Jomar is one of thousands of athletes preparing for Palaro. Organizers put together last-minute preparations. This event gathers the country's best student athletes. Jomar says training is hard, but he is determined to win a gold and make his parents and 9 siblings proud. He and his coach Dennis dream of bigger things, like competing in the Asian Games. Palaro is just the first step. Stories like Jomar's make Palarong Pambansa the inspirational event it is. Tales of struggle and determination take center stage this coming week, highlighting the resilience of the Filipino athlete. Natasha Gutierrez, Rappler, Dumaguete.
Well, let's now look at Rappler's Wrap for today, a list of the 10 most important events around the world you shouldn't miss. At number 6, Ban Ki-moon becomes the first UN Secretary General to visit the Pentagon on April 18th. His talks with Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Martin Dempsey, focus on the crisis over North Korea, with the regime making threats against its enemies. He also spoke with U.S. military leaders about planned peacekeeping missions in Mali, Somalia, and Syria. At number 8, Twitter launches a music service that suggests tunes based on users' tweets and lets people sample songs they might like. The company says the new service uses Twitter activity to, quote, detect and surface the most popular tracks and emerging artists. Twitter users can get 30-second samples of songs from iTunes, Spotify, or RDO music services. And at number 9, with the backing of more than 1,300 people on crowdfunding website Indiegogo, hacktivist group Anonymous gets funds to build its own news website, surpassing its modest goal of $2,000, that's about 80,000 pesos, and acquiring more than $54,000, that's about 2.25 million pesos in funding. The group says its YAN website aims to provide live streamers and independent journalists support and a platform to report the news. For the full top 10, visit Rappler.com's The Wrap. Every story on Rappler has a mood meter, which gives you 8 emotions to choose from. Click how you feel, and your vote comes down to the mood navigator. That's the middle of the front page that crowdsources the mood of the day. It also gives you the top 10 stories that have gotten the most vote on their mood meters. These are the stories that have affected the way Filipinos feel. If we take a look today, it's a predominantly green day. Aquino lands on Time's 100 most influential, 58% happy, 32% inspired. This one, a mock poll done by the Movement for Good Governance, June Magsaysay, Coco Pimentel, and Risa Ontiveros win that poll, 70% happy, 23% inspired, and 5% angry. If you take a look, that green mood of the day, today, most people are happy. Well, that's Rappler's Newscast for today, Friday, April 19th, 2013. Visit Rappler.com and watch our newscast Monday to Friday. Tell us how you feel on our mood meter and help us crowdsource the mood of the day. I'm Maria Ressa. As we say at Rappler, tomorrow begins today.